About a year and a half ago, we stopped RVing full-time, bought a fixer-upper house in South Alabama, and we're excited to fulfill our dreams of living in a small town near the beach.
But as of a couple of weeks ago, we officially sold that house, moved all of our stuff into storage, and now we're in the process of moving to Tennessee.
This seems like a lot of time, money, and effort to move states twice, all for nothing. Whoops. Especially for a couple who typically prize themselves in being long-term thinkers and planners. So why did we do this, and why should you care? We'll give you our why in a minute, but as for why you should care, it's because you likely have big decisions coming up, whether it's moving, changing careers, or having a kid. And those big decisions can be really stressful if you don't have a framework to help guide you along the way, especially when money is involved. And that's what we're gonna give you in this video.
So to understand why we bought a house in our dream town and then sold it less than 2 years later, you first have to understand our quarterly routine. Michael Hyatt has this great quote where he says, "You'll never drift to a place you would have previously chosen." And yet that's how most of us live. We just drift along instead of choosing ahead of time the life that we're working towards.
So every 3 months, Hannah and I take 2 to 3 days to revisit our life vision. This is a document that we have used to plan our goals for the next 1, 3, 5, and 10 years.
We talk about things like our ideal day, where we want to live, where we want to travel, how often we want to see family, what sort of community we want to have, hobbies we want to pursue, and of course, what our finances should look like.
In order to develop this vision, we have to be clear on our values. These are our top level priorities. For us, these include growing our relationship with Christ, both individually and together, having an active and healthy lifestyle, and controlling our own time. The point of this document is to help architect our own life, to avoid just letting life happen to us. Now, back to why we bought and sold the house. See, in 2020, we had just finished RVing for about 3 years, and we fell in love with a little town called Fairhope, Alabama. It was right near the beach, it was super walkable, and it was only a day's drive from family. It appeared to have everything that we thought were our top values.
But ultimately, a lot changed in the year after we bought our house. We were having to travel, well, not having to, but we wanted to travel a lot to see our family, and we were also trying to do all this renovation stuff, and it just was a lot.
So every single quarter, we're doing these check-ins, we're looking at our vision, and we found ourselves continually feeling unsettled. And what we thought was gonna be this really exciting thing turned out to be not quite what we thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, we kind of kept coming back to this place where the repeated thing that we said was our life just doesn't feel cohesive. Like the things that we say we want to prioritize and work towards, it doesn't feel like we've set up our life to actually get there.
It was funny because every time we would have these like quarterly meetings, we would talk about this and then we would just kind of chalk it up to, you know, year of transition. It takes a little while to get to know a place and all this stuff. But you know, we would almost then recommit to going like, no, we definitely want to stay here. We definitely love the city.
Yeah.
And then even a couple weeks or a couple months later, we sort of find ourselves circling back to this conversation of considering moving.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, after a lot of like prayer and a whole lot of conversations, there's totally a bug on our lens. We kind of came to this conclusion of, you know what? We need to move. Living in Fairhope was an experiment that we wanted to try because we loved Fairhope, and it didn't work out the way we thought it was going to work out.
Not at all, and it ended up costing us, you know, quite a bit too. We really wanted to give Fairhope a proper test. That meant making the house the way that we wanted it, not coming in with some temporary mindset. And really, only by the grace of God did we not lose our shirts. After all the expenses were accounted for, we barely broke even.
And if you consider our opportunity cost for this little adventure, instead of just going ahead and buying a house in Tennessee to begin with, well, we just won't even consider this.
But at the end, really, I would say that we think it's worth it. We are glad that we did the test. And it's because of this thing called the regret minimization framework that I can confidently say, I'm glad we did that. I first heard this idea from Jeff Bezos in an interview he did in 2008.
So I wanted to project myself forward to age 80 and say, okay, now I'm looking back on my life. I want to have minimized the number of regrets I have. And you know, I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I knew the one thing I might regret is not ever having tried. And I knew that that would haunt me every day And so when I thought about it that way, it was an incredibly easy decision.
We knew if we looked back on our life and we had never even tried to go live close to the beach like we always talked about, we were going to regret it.
Totally.
That's my credo. No regrets.
Now we know that as much as we love the beach and we love Fairhope, it wasn't the right place for us.
Now we never have to ask the question of like, what if, which would have totally eaten me alive if we hadn't have given it a try.
We've got 3 takeaways that we've kind of pulled out of this experience for you to learn from. So maybe you'll have a little less opportunity cost.
Yeah, the first one is really thinking through future flexibility when it comes to making a big decision that you're gonna make. We were able to buy a house, put a ton of money into it, and then sell it without too much trouble because we weren't strapped down in other ways. We don't have any consumer debt, we have no auto loans, no student loans, no other debt of any kind, and we've been budgeting like crazy since the early years of our marriage. So that allowed us to have a lot of flexibility to make a change when we decided that we did want to make it. That's really something we're always thinking about, is going, okay, well, we think this is what we want to do, but if we pull the trigger on this decision, is it going to cause us to have so much inflexibility? Is that a word? Unflexibility, inflexibility. It's going to cause things to be so tight that if we get down the road and we want to make a change, it's going to be very difficult to do. I think a lot of people want to manage their money well and get out of debt or stick to a budget because it's going to allow them to buy cool stuff or take cool vacations. But I think a really underrated reason of managing your money well is to have future flexibility. The question is not, can you afford this? Does it work into the budget? The question is, can I afford this, and am I willing to trade the future flexibility that this purchase or decision might take away from me? Sometimes you are willing to trade flexibility, like having a kid makes you really inflexible, but it might be worth it to you.
Obviously.
Whereas there's other decisions that, when you think about it, the inflexibility that it's going to take away or add is not going to be worth it to you.
Our second action point is to minimize regret, because at the end of the day, you've got 2 resources in life, really, and that's your time and your money. And sometimes it's okay to take a little bit of risk with those so that you can avoid getting to your deathbed and going like, oh, I just wonder what if I had tried X, Y, or Z.
The third point is to not let sunk costs get in the way of actually living out your values.
Nick's a lot better at this than I am. Like when you first brought up moving, I was like,
Hell no. Come on to the no, no, no.
And it was really hard to walk away from Fairhope. We loved pretty much everything about it, except for the fact that both of our families was 9 hours away. It was just too much. It was further than we had thought. And the path of least resistance would have been to stay. And we could have actually probably justified it with, all the financial, time and effort and money that we've poured into these projects and all of that stuff. It was really hard to not let sunk costs get in the way. And I just want to encourage you to really try and have a lot of self-awareness around these decisions and ask yourself if you are making a decision purely because that's what you had already chosen in the past, or if you're making your decisions based on the values that are important to you in the present.
So thanks for letting us share the journey that we've been on for the past couple of years. We're really excited to be more consistent in 2022.
Yeah, we think life is going to be a lot more cohesive. I think life is going to be a lot more cohesive here in Tennessee without all the travel back and forth. And if everything goes according to plan, we'll have some pretty big news to share about our new home here in Tennessee in just a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that.
But in the meantime, we've got this awesome storage unit to fill out.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see y'all soon. Did that make sense? Was that wordy?
Wasn't awesome.
Wasn't awesome.
I'd do it again.